I'm late. Hello, mentorship group. Sorry that I'm late to today's class. I was just stuck on the phone with a buyer, a referral buyer from Temecula, a guy that I've sold a couple houses with. Referred me one of his colleagues. So I got stuck on the line helping him understand what it's going to take to buy a new place. That's super typical in this industry, right? Like, I've struggled with being punctual for a long time. It's something that I've had to work on really hard to make sure that I'm on time when I go places. I'm 20 minutes late to our class almost. So I apologize for that. That's the nature of the beast. Yesterday I sent a referral to a gal in Florida, and she was calling me repeatedly, wanted the deal, and then when I finally called her back, she couldn't answer the phone because she was doing something with one of her clients. So that's how it goes. Today's class, I just want to kind of go over the timetable for a typical escrow. We just closed a deal with an agent that I felt like that agent didn't understand the timeline and how things worked. And so I feel like that's probably a good short topic for a class today, in terms of teaching you guys the timetable for a typical escrow. Do I have a printout to give you? No, I don't. I could go do one downstairs, but I don't want to do that since I'll leave the camera and I don't want to do that. So today's class will be short and sweet. We'll go over the timeline from day 0 to day 30 or day closing, whenever you hand over the keys. And we'll keep it short and sweet. Starting with day 0, you've been out there showing houses for 2 weeks, 6 months, a year, who knows how long you've been out there showing houses with this client. Hopefully that will have given you the opportunity to talk to your clients and help them understand how the home buying process goes and how long it takes. I want to encourage you guys to take some of the flyers that I've made and that I give you guys, or the stuff that you can get from any of the other coaches that explain the timetable of an escrow, a glossary of terms, the home buyer and seller guide, which is this book that you can get from Ryan Lipsey. The title company gives these out. It's got all sorts of great information about buying and selling real estate. Yes, you want your clients to feel comfortable to reach out and ask you questions, but you look awfully cool if you're giving them stuff proactively to help them with the home buying process. I staple my business card right down here over this logo at the bottom, and I give that to clients at the first meeting, and I also give them the timetable for a typical escrow. Let me see, is this backwards? Yes, it is backwards. Well, for those of you guys that are at home watching this, shoot me an email and I can send you that so that you can have it for yourself. So you built this rapport with this client, and now it's time to actually put on the show, right? And this is for buy side, but it actually doesn't matter. Buy side, sell side, the escrow process is the same. So at day 0, you've selected a property and the purchase agreement is signed by both buyer and seller. Great, congratulations. In the first 3 days after a contract has been ratified, one of the agents, usually the listing agent, contacts the escrow company to open a new file. If you're representing the buyer, tell them to either wire the earnest money deposit, known as the EMD, or often, if they live close enough, I encourage clients to go to the escrow company themselves to make the deposit in person. The reason why we do that is because, let's drop this down so I'm a little bit more in the camera. The reason why we do that is because I want them to know where the escrow office is, understand that the escrow company is a different entity. It's not the real estate agent, and they shouldn't be asking you too many escrow related questions. And just so that they can build a relationship with that escrow company. They're going to go there possibly to sign their loan docs. They could go there to sign their loan docs. So, I mean, it's totally important for them to know the escrow company. And the escrow company at that time will have them sign all of their escrow paperwork, which makes it easier for usually your TC, or you not having to get involved to do escrow's paperwork. A note about paperwork, this last transaction that I have in my mind that I'm thinking about right now, the buyer's broker didn't recognize the difference between different people's jobs. And I say this a lot, don't do other people's work. It just makes it worse for you. And it's not your job to hunt down the documentation for title and escrow, right? It's not your job to collect HOA documents. It's not your job to collect grant deeds. It's not your job to collect the lender's loan documents. Yes, you can be there to support your buyer or seller if you're working in a listing agent, as a listing agent, but it's not your responsibility to do that stuff. Your job is to do the real estate disclosures. In fact, your TC can do the real estate disclosures, and as the real estate agent, you just want to stay in your lane and help them with the real estate aspect of the transaction, not the financial aspect from lender or escrow, and not the title aspect from the title company. As an agent, you want to focus on inspecting the property and helping them know whether the house is infested with termites or rats or bees nest, or what's broken and what's going on with the utilities and all that stuff. So days 1 to 3 after the contract is accepted is when you help your buyer make their earnest money deposit, EMD. A special note about that, we do not have a trust account here at Big Block Realty, meaning we never touch money, never ever touch money. If your client says, here's a check, take this and run this check over to the escrow company, say, no thank you, I can't touch your money. You can give them an envelope or something and tell them to mail it. I don't know. Don't touch money. We never touch money. It's a huge liability and a big no-no. And if you remember from real estate school, you're not allowed to touch money if your broker doesn't have a trust account. Big Block Realty does not have a trust account. Don't touch money. Checks, nothing. As a side note, BBR requires that you open a new transaction in Back Agent within 72 hours of a new contract. I will walk you through that if you don't know what you're doing. Specifically, our TCs are doing this right now. So I think I want to train you guys on how to do that anyhow. I think it's important for you to learn Back Agent. But within 72 hours of getting a new contract, you need to go into Back Agent and create a new transaction and start uploading all the transaction documents. That's a mandatory thing. You'll get a fine from Big Block if you don't do it within the 72 hours. So I'll walk you through that if you need help with Back Agent. Also, side note, there's a link to Back Agent. If you guys don't know the Back Agent, what is it? backagent.bigblockrealty.net address. If you go to bigblockrealty.com, up at the top in the menu, there's an Agents tab. In the Agents tab, there's a link to Back Agent. So that should help you guys remember how to get there. That's days 1 through 3, right? So in the first few days, your buyer makes their deposit. In the first week, days 1 through 7, by the 7th day, the seller is supposed to deliver to the following items to buyer: seller's disclosures, transfer disclosure statement, seller property questionnaire, HOA docs, natural hazard zone disclosure, a wood destroying pest inspection, and a preliminary title report. Note that the NHD and wood destroying pest and prelim are up for negotiations with respect to who pays for them and who orders them. Follow the purchase agreement as your reference. The contract states who's going to do what. So I know that many of us are just blanking over the contract. We read the first page and the dollar amount, and that's all that we really care about. But there is a lot of other information in the purchase agreement that matters. Later on down the line, you don't want to get 16, 18 days into the contract, and then all of a sudden your buyer's like, oh, I didn't see a termite inspection, a wood destroying pest. Does this house have termites? And then you go, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. And the other agent didn't remember to do it either. So nobody's ordered this report and you're at the end of your contingency date. That's why it's good to be proactive as the buyer's broker and just handle that stuff. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of double touch when yourself and the other agent are both doing things collectively to get the deal done quickly and smoothly. Totally fine. We encourage it. You want to I've done many classes on building rapport. If you have great rapport with the other agent, that sort of stuff it makes that much easier when you're having regular conversation with the other agent about whether the termite inspection is already done, if there's an NHD, when the HOA docs are coming. And then you're right, Luis. Why it's also good to have a good TC? Because your TC is going to stay on top of that. What I would say about a good TC is that some TCs are so good. Luis and I use Crystal, but Crystal is so good, but she does everything for me. And it's been like that for many years with her and I, but it does make me a little bit lazy, and then I miss things like the prelim or the transfer disclosure statement. Ideally, you would have a copy of the transfer disclosure statement and the seller property questionnaire and the wood destroying pest inspection and title report at the time of your physical home inspection. It's very helpful to be able to look at seller property questionnaire, and the seller writes down all the known material defects in the house, so you can go and you look at those things for yourself at the time of your physical home inspection. I noticed that a lot of time that gets missed completely in that especially I'm notorious for this. I want to inspect the house so quickly because I want to know if the deal is going to be solid or not. So I introduce my buyer into Scott usually for the home inspection, and then he's Johnny on the spot. They go out there within the first week and inspect the house. A lot of times I don't have a copy of the seller property questionnaire in hand. And so that creates a situation where after we've already inspected the house, we get a note, the SPQ from the seller, and it says, oh, leak under the faucet and the hose bib on the back of the house is leaking. And you're like, oh, dang, well, I don't remember seeing that, and how bad is it? Okay, great, I gotta drive back out to the house and look again. So anyways, if possible, before you go to the home inspection, you will have a copy of the seller's disclosures and transfer disclosure statement, seller property questionnaire, wood destroying pest, and preliminary title report. About the preliminary title report, it's going to have listed all the easements and other stuff, all the clouds on title that may or may not affect the property in a real way, like mineral rights and riparian rights, water rights, if you guys remember that stuff from real estate school. It does matter. Property lines are the biggest ones. We don't really run into that stuff in tract housing very often, but we do. San Diego is a pretty big county, and we do run into that in rural areas, in the East County area, where the property lines make a bigger difference. And there are often times where there are disputes for property lines. You can get a plot map from the title companies. Sometimes you have to get it from the county recorder's office, but having that at your physical home inspection can make a big difference, especially with like easements for utilities. If there's like a whole portion of the yard that, like, my buddy Alex bought a house like this in San Marcos last couple years ago. and it had setbacks on the back of the house that were bigger than the 10-foot normal setbacks. He intended to build a garage, a detached garage on his property, but he couldn't do it because the house had, is that person coming for this class? I hope not. He couldn't do it because the setbacks for the utilities company was 30 feet, and it encroached onto his property so far that he wasn't able to use that land. He's not doing anything with it now. He actually just parks his car out on he's got this big lot and he parks it out in front, but he doesn't have a garage anymore, or he never got to build his garage, which for a car guy like me, that would be a nightmare. But anyways, that's just something to look for that a seller isn't gonna say, oh yeah, like for instance, in that deal, the seller didn't say, oh yeah, the reason why the yard looks like crap over there and it's just all dirt for 40 feet is because I can't do anything with that part of my yard because there's a utilities easement for ingress and egress for the SDG&E to get to the back of the property where all the power lines are. So that's stuff that you're gonna have to only find out by looking at the preliminary title report, the title report itself. So that all happens in the first week, ideally during the first week of home inspections. Days 3, so moving on in the timetable for a typical escrow. Once you've passed that, you get into days 3 through 17. By the 17th day, the buyer has the following items completed. You've reviewed and signed the seller's disclosures, meaning the buyer has seen the transfer disclosure statement, the seller property questionnaire, has the HOA docs, has seen the natural hazard zone disclosure for use. Those of you that don't know what an NHD is, it's to let you know if it's in a flood zone or a high fire zone, how close the natural gas lines are, earthquake zones, oh no, I don't think it has airports on it. I don't remember. I haven't looked at an NHD in a while. A side note about that, and it was like a little side idea that I had. When we were looking to buy our house, we're up here in Carlsbad, but we're semi-close to Palomar Airport. There were some houses that we saw were too close to that airport, and the noise pollution was noticeable. There are noise pollution maps that you can look up online. I forget the name of the company that has it. It's free to the public, and you just go and type in the address, and you can see on a scale how noisy the area you live in is. I can tell you from having moved from Point Loma, for those of you guys that have known me for a long time, I used to live in Mission Hills on Bankers Hill, right above India Street at the start of the San Diego International Airport runway. And that was a ridiculously loud area. We had freeway noise, airport noise, and city noise. It was a nightmare. But I really loved living so close to the heartbeat of the city, and so I do miss that sometimes. But extremely loud. On the noise report, it would have had you, if you show your buyers that, you might save them from making a decision that they didn't want to do and regretting the decision. I guess you can look at that twofold. If they should know the area and be able to see and hear how loud it is. But let's say you're showing homes in Mission Hills or downtown, like people better understand how loud and noisy it is there. If they don't, and they buy a house, for instance, in Mission Hills because they believed that that's a great neighborhood, and then all of a sudden they change their mind a year later and they're mad at you, who knows, maybe you'll get a second deal out of it, right? But those noise maps can make a big difference, and they should be given in the NHD. I don't know why they're not, but they should be, because it does make a huge difference. Where I'm at now, I do hear the airplanes flying overhead from Palomar Airport coming in on, I don't know what they're doing. They're just doing loops around the area, because I'm like 5 miles from the airport, but they're still close enough. But you know, like I said, we chose a house that was further away because of the sheer noise of that airport. So anyways, that's signed. Okay, where was I? By the 17th day, the buyer has the following items completed: reviewed and signed seller's disclosures. We got that. Reviewed and signed the wood destroying pest inspection report. If your buyer hasn't already finished a pest inspection, that must be done, because your inspection contingency, your buyer's inspection contingency, typically is 17 days. So you really need to have a wood destroying pest inspector, a termite guy, out to the house before a week's time, because sometimes it takes time for them to produce that report and then for you guys to negotiate it in the request for repairs. I want to pause there at wood destroying pests, termite guys, and make a side disclaimer. I don't know if I've ever even said this on camera before. The termite industry is a very unregulated industry. I'll say that. You want to stay away from the large companies like, you know, the big namers. The big namers have sales guys that come out to the house, and they get paid by the gas that they sell, right? So the fumigation gas is a money maker for some of the big companies. I'm not going to use their names because I'm on camera, and I don't want to get caught up in any drama. But some of the big name companies I've seen this before, where the guy comes and he tells you that your house has infestation, and his primary recommendation is to fumigate the house. So they say, oh great, here you go, yep, oh you got termites, here's a $3,500 bill to fumigate. When a buyer sees that, the buyer's going to say, oh my goodness, this house has termites. Here, seller, this is a number one item on my request for repairs, and it's $3,500 to fix. And then sellers will go, what the heck? No, we don't have termites. I've lived here for now 16 years. We had the house tinted not too long ago. I haven't seen any termites, blah, blah, blah. Like, it becomes a big issue, and buyers and sellers end up running into a lot of trouble trying to negotiate that stuff. So you want to know upfront as soon as possible. And like I said, if you're representing a seller, absolutely hire a termite company you trust. We have an in-house company here at Big Block. I want to say it's Spartan. I should look that up. I don't know the name of the company. Let me look it up. But anyways, you want to make sure that you're using a reputable termite company. Preferred vendors. Let's see if I have that. Preferred vendors. Beats me, man. I don't know. Preferred vendors. Big Block preferred vendors. I had it somewhere. Vendor cheat sheet. In San Diego anymore. Well, there's the decommissioned one at San Onofre. But network connection, come back. Okay. And then let's see here. Review and sign the preliminary title report. We talked about that, why that's so important. The buyer before 17 days wants to have ordered, reviewed, and sign a physical home inspection report, which we talked about that. Ordered, review, and sign an additional any additional inspection the buyer deemed necessary. Septic, plumbing, I forgot the word why. Any in the word why. So sometimes your physical home inspector will ask you to get other inspections, to bring a specialist out to look at something they found. That's a judgment call on behalf of the buyer. The home inspector is going to try to cover his butt all the time. That's super important to home inspectors, is to cover their bum. So they're going to tell you if they see plumbing leaks or electrical issues, they're going to tell you, oh, you should hire an electrician to come out there and do it. The catch-22 with doing that is that, let's say the electrical panel is good enough, but not up to current standards. And so the home inspector says on the report, I think you should have an electrician come look at that. Your buyer's going to see that and get freaked out. It happens. It's completely normal. The problem is that then you bring a electrician out, the electrician wants to get paid for his time, and so of course he's going to say, well, yeah, this panel's okay, but it's not current and it could cause a fire, could be an electrical hazard. For $3,500, I'll put an all new state-of-the-art panel in. How's that sound? You know, and then if that happens during the escrow process, man, another butting heads point. That's where buyers and sellers can really run into trouble, and you can't, and that kills your deal. And so what I'm trying to tell you guys is to present the facts to your buyers or your client in a way that is emotionless. Don't cause fear or perpetuate fear at all in any way, shape, or form. The reason why I like using Scott Snow for physical home inspections is because he doesn't scare people. Once somebody gets scared, they start freaking out and asking for all these things, and for you as the agent, it's hard to keep the forward progression of the deal. So when it says in the electrical, in the report, usually what I'll do is I'll give the buyer their options. You can bring an electrician out, or you can start by asking the seller to take care of the issue. I would say about half the time, a seller also feels like it's an important enough thing, and they'll spend a few bucks to fix it on behalf of the buyer. So if it doesn't happen, you just got to stay painfully neutral and present the facts and let the buyer make their own decision. Usually a buyer, if they really like a house, will not back out of a deal because of one thing here, one thing there. Okay, I'm just kind of reading my notes just so I make sure I'm not missing anything or going too far ahead. After all the inspections have been completed, the buyer has a right to submit a formal request for repairs to the seller. Usually the request for repairs consists of safety, security, and functional items. Rarely does it include cosmetic items. Be very careful not to let your buyer submit a huge laundry list of repair requests. This is such a sensitive topic, and the reason why I say it is this. When you buy a new house, no matter how good of condition the property is in, there's always going to be little projects that need to be handled and taken care of. Anybody that's bought a house over in the past will know this. It's very hard to tackle all of these projects, especially when you take a house that's a fixer. A lot of people will say, I'll take the house, it's a fixer, I want a fixer because I'm going to get a deal. The truth is they're not really getting much of a deal. They're buying a house at market price. If they get a super killer deal and they're really handy, great, more power to them. But for the most part, people just want to move in and be chill and relax. I mean, the last thing you want to do after moving into a house is spend week after week after week repairing things. Our house that we just bought is 17 years old. It is in pristine condition considering its age. Actually, 17 is not old, but there's stuff that we have to do. My master kitchen, the kitchen faucet right now is leaking again. We already had a plumber out to fix a different faucet. So you can see as time goes on, just more and more stuff happens. The more clean a house is at the time that your buyer takes possession, the easier it will be on them. That doesn't mean that you as the buyer's broker are pushing a laundry list of request items, or that you're scaring your buyer into thinking that they need a perfect brand new house. But you want to focus on safety. The buyer will want to focus on safety, security, and functional items. Those are the three groups, categories of stuff that a buyer should be focusing on. Beware, I got a special note. Beware of some agents. This is, now I'm talking about when you're the listing agent. Beware of some agents who use the request for repair as a way to earn a discount for their buyers. Excuse me. There are way too many unethical agents in our market that will encourage their buyers to make offers over asking in an effort to beat out the competition. Then, once they're in contract, they send the seller a huge list of repairs with the intent of getting a huge price reduction. This is an unethical practice, but it happens a lot, so beware. I'll reiterate. This happened to me last time I sold a house in Carmel Valley. We broke records in that neighborhood. It was a nice townhouse. We sold it for like $630. The highest other sale was like $590, whatever. We sold it for like 40 grand more. We had 9 offers, 11 offers in the first weekend, something like that. Certain buyers will make offers that are way higher than what they're intending on paying for the house. They do that because they believe that they will win the bid, right? That there's all these other buyers. Let's say it is the situation where I got 9 different offers, and they believe they want to put the most money forward so that the seller selects them. Well, it's not always money that makes the deal go round, right? Yeah, like sellers love that bottom dollar, but terms make a big difference. Like a lot of times, a contingent buyer, somebody who needs to sell a house before they can buy, will pay a little bit more for a house so that the seller will wait through that process with them. But when it's not you want to be wary of a buyer who's willing to just pay whatever for a house. That usually means that when they come into the home inspection process, they're going to start grinding down the seller for a discount and for a bunch of repairs. So those are little nuances that you'll pick up on after being in the industry a long enough amount of time. After selling enough homes, you start to pick up on these nuances. I can't teach that so much as I can just say it, and hopefully you guys are aware. But it does happen. All right, so moving on, days 18 through 29 of the contract. Basically, you've been in escrow now for 20 days. The buyer and seller have agreed on repairs, and you're moving forward. By day 17, 18, the seller should by now have completed all the work in section 1 of the wood destroying pest inspection. Do you guys know what the difference is between section 1 and section 2? I'll just say it real quick. Section 1, termite repairs, is kill the bugs and fix the fascia boards. Section 2 is the deeper down underneath supporting structure and more significant damage to the wood rot underneath the house. So by the 18, I should say, I wrote seller should by now have completed all the work in section 1 before day 29. It is possible that a termite company won't be able to finish the repairs before closing. It is normal for, if a seller agrees to fixing it, and then the termite company is hired for the job, it is normal for a buyer to take possession of a house that hasn't had that repair yet. That also goes for other repairs. There are times when a buyer closes on escrow before the repairs have been completed, just because of timing. And also, all agreed items in the request for repairs should be completed before escrow closes. Ideally, it's done before escrow closes. If a seller credit was given in exchange for repairs, great. Note that sometimes a partial seller credit is given and the seller will still do some repairs. Depends on how the negotiations pan out. So it is completely normal for there to be a little bit of a dollar credit and a repairs credit, right? So sometimes the list of safety, security, and functional items is a little bit long, and the seller just doesn't have the time to tackle it all. They say, let me give you $1,000 to handle all this BS, and I'm gonna fix the furnace and the hot water heater, or whatever. But, 2 big items, and here's $1,000 to do the rest. That happens a lot, and it makes things a lot smoother. To note though, that makes your buyer's life a lot harder after closing. All right, moving on, days 26 through 29 of the escrow process. Buyer, accompanied by their realtor, does a final walkthrough and visual inspection of the property. The form we use is called Verification of Property Condition, VP. The verification of property condition says two things. On it, it says, one, that the property is in substantially the same condition as on the day of the offer, and two, that all requested repairs have been completed. You don't have to write anything on the form if both of those things are correct. The only time you write something into the section on the VP is if the seller didn't fix something. Then you're notating that you, before close of escrow, noted that the seller didn't do something. If the seller chooses not to do it and lies, for instance, that becomes a sticky point. Gail's the one that taught me this, actually. The verification of property condition isn't meant for the buyer to stop the escrow process. It's just meant to notate whether the agreed upon requests for repairs have been done or not, or if the house was damaged in the process of move out, for instance, on the part of the sellers. If ideally, as the agent, if you find something that's not done, you're calling the listing agent right away and you're saying, dude, I just did my VP, I noticed this and this isn't done. How fast, when is the person gonna get out there to do that? If they're elusive, just acting like jerks, if the listing agent has no control over the seller and the seller's just being a jerk and not doing it, that is a really sticky situation. But what that basically means is that the buyer is still pretty much forced to close escrow and sue the seller. It really sucks, I hate it and I don't like it, but it's a rock and hard place for a buyer, because generally, because you've released your inspection contingencies before you did the verification of property condition, I just had a realization, then your buyer can't back out of the transaction without their without their earnest money deposit being subject to liquidated damages. I just realized something, and I need to talk to other agents about this. If they do their VP before they remove the inspection no, you can't, because the timing doesn't work for that. The reason why I thought that might work is sometimes I stretch my inspection contingency until the other agent is asking me for it. The reason I do that is because I've had buyers in the past who were just wishy-washy, and I had one gal many years ago who lost the deal after we released inspection contingencies. Luckily, we didn't remove the loan contingencies, so she didn't lose her deposit, but it was a really ugly deal, and I never want that to happen again. So I'm always skeptical about removing contingencies until the buyer says it's 100%, 1,000,000% good to go. Seller should have been, okay, that's my final walkthrough. And then days 30 through 35, the loan is funded. The property change in ownership is recorded, and the buyer's name is recorded with the county on the grant deed. It's time to celebrate and get paid for all your hard work. Two things I want to mention about the last 5 days of the contract. We have a 3-day closing rule in mortgage lending. Once your mortgage lender discloses the loan, it's called the loan disclosure, there's a 3-day rule for funding. They can't fund the loan until 3 calendar days after the buyer signs the loan disclosure that says exactly the loan terms and the exact dollar amounts. So there's this waiting period after they sign the loan disclosure. And then the other thing, I think I want to just teach you guys one additional thing about the difference between a trust deed and the grant deed. The change in ownership doesn't happen when the money goes from the lender to the escrow company. That's just the wiring the money, and that forms a trust deed. That is different than a grant deed. A trust deed is evidence of the debt. The grant deed is evidence of ownership. So the county recorder's office keeps these grant deeds. The title rep that works at the county recorder's office once they get confirmation from the escrow company to say, hey, the money was wired, we have the money now, they tell the title person, okay, look it over, make sure everything's good, all the title conditions have been met, go ahead and stamp the buyer's name, stamp the new buyer's name onto the grant deed. At that moment, boom, that's when the buyer becomes the homeowner. And then you'll get an email confirmation. Usually that email goes out from the title company or somebody at the escrow company. And that's it. Celebrate, time to get paid for your hard work after you've reached that point. You're gonna go back to the house again, and you're gonna take the keys out of the lockbox and give those to your buyer. I suggest bringing a little housewarming gift. You don't have to do it, it's not mandatory, but I think people love that. So I think that, you know, you can decide on what works for you. A little house plant, it seems to be a nice tradition. I like to bring a bottle of champagne. That's a great time to ask for referrals and to get a testimonial, get a photo of them at the front of the house holding the keys. Put that on your website, share it on social media, go live. Man, going live. You know what? I haven't seen any agents doing this yet. And for any agents that are out there watching this or watch this later on replay, go live at your when you're handing over the keys. And just roll up, get out of the car. Hey, I'm going live right now. I'm just handing over the keys to my new buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're so happy. Say what's up, yeah, whatever. Here's the keys, boom, jingle, jingle. Pop a bottle, whatever you gotta do. Make a celebration out of it. I don't know. People may like that, who knows. But that's it. I have been talking in your guys' face now for 45 minutes, so that's as long as I want to be doing that. But as per usual, if you guys need me at all, I'm in the Carlsbad office. You can see I'm in my new office here, and I'm here all the time. I live 2 miles away from here, so if you need me, I'm more than happy to meet with you guys in person at this office, or we could jump on a call, text, email, whatever works for you. Just don't hesitate to reach out. I want to see you guys crushing it. Right now is the time of year where sales have gone up. We only went up at like 900 sales 460 sales over last year. So over last month, it's not like a huge amount, but there are more listings coming on the market every day. And it's going to stay strong through about August, September, and then it'll fall off again. So right now is the get at it time, and that's it. Get at it. Great to see you guys, and talk soon.